Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for this free webinar called Facebook Advertising for Small Businesses. You can ask questions at any time using the GoToMeeting control panel located on your screen. My name is Michelle Wheeler, and I'm a junior partner and digital strategist at PSM Marketing. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I attended St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. I have a home office that I am really into. I love it. It's full of plants and books and wonderful things. And I have two rescue beagles named Margot and Nova. So today we are going to be covering a basic overview about PSM. We're going to talk about why Facebook advertising is important. And we're going to dive into the 5 steps for Facebook advertising success, which include defining your goals, creating an audience, crafting content, setting a budget, and measuring success. First, a little bit about PSM. PSM Marketing was founded by my mom, Terry Wheeler, in 1997. We serve industries in, the legal, financial services, contractors, nonprofits, small businesses. So we've been serving those industries ever since 1997, and we absolutely love what we do. One thing that makes PSM unique is that we have an outsourced marketing model, meaning that companies don't need to hire an in-house marketing team member, but rather they can hire PSM to serve that outsourced marketing function. And ever since 1997, PSM has actually been a virtual company. So we have over 30 different resources. Most of them are in the Midwest, but we do have some people in Canada. We have one team member who's actually leaving next month for a stint in Estonia. So it's a really cool work environment. And like I said, we've been virtual ever since the company's foundation in '97. So why is Facebook advertising important for small businesses? The number one question I get asked is, does Facebook advertising actually work? To which my response is always, well, have you ever seen an ad on social media and bought something? I know I certainly have. In fact, I can guarantee that Eddie Bauer and LL Bean are several $100s richer because of their ad targeting, but that's neither here nor there. What matters is being where your customers are. And while you don't have the same budget flexibility as a large retailer or Fortune 500 company, you do have the benefit of the same consumer pool. When it comes to Facebook advertising, everyone is bound by those same limitations. So whether you're a law firm, a winery, an artist, a contractor, nonprofit, CPA firm, etc., Facebook advertising can really benefit you. But first, you have to be where your customers are. So where are they? Looking at this graph, it's actually really interesting because users who are 65 plus are the fastest growing group on Facebook. In 2019, the most significant change in Facebook user demographics was among users born in 1945 or earlier, aka the silent generation. This age group had grown on the platform from 26% in 2018 to nearly 40% in 2019. Interestingly, millennials and baby boomers only increased by a maximum of 2%, and Gen Xers actually reduced their Facebook use. So some people might look at this graph and say that, maybe it's a death knell for Facebook, but actually that's not really the case. So let's look at teens, for example. So the Gen Xers were the group there that was really reducing their use on Facebook. But if we look at where teens are actually using social media, the top channels are YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook. Twitter is coming in there as sort of a sad 5th place. But what's really interesting is that in 2015, 71% of teens were active on Facebook, and now only 51% of teens between the age of 13 and 17 use Facebook. So you can see that, YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat are really sort of taking those first 3 slots for teenagers. But it's important to note that Facebook actually owns Instagram. And so when we're talking about Facebook advertising, there's really this reciprocal relationship between these 2 channels. So when you create an ad on Facebook, it will automatically be placed on Instagram. So regardless of your target audience in terms of their age, Facebook advertising is really going to hit all of those different categories. So while it might seem like, there's no urge to use social media these days or more, the data really shows that Facebook's overall active users continue to increase every year on the platform as a whole. So, among active users in the US, 74% of people use Facebook every single day. And looking at this chart here, 88% of those Facebook users attribute their use to staying connected with friends and family. And this reminds me of conversations we have with our clients a lot about, LinkedIn versus Facebook. And Facebook really is the personal side of social media compared to LinkedIn, which is much more often used to strengthen professional networks. Looking at when people use Facebook is also really important. So looking at this chart is really interesting because it shows that the highest traffic occurs midday on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So when you're planning, your social media strategy, that's also important to keep in mind. Facebook is still the #1 platform for marketers and consumers. And recent Facebook statistics note that the platform produces one of the best ROIs for marketers when it comes to social ads. So given that your clients are already on Facebook, there's really every reason for you to be there too. So let's dive in. Let's talk about using Facebook ads to drive website traffic and leads. As we explore Facebook advertising together, I'll be using a local business called R&R CULTIVATION as my example. R&R is an urban mushroom farm located in Roseville, Minnesota, but the concepts that we'll cover today actually apply to really any small business, nonprofit, or professional firm. One thing that's interesting about R&R Cultivation is that they recently launched an organic mushroom CSA, which is a community shared agriculture program that provides weekly or monthly deliveries to their consumers' doorstep. So to help promote this new service, PSM helped R&R create a Facebook ad campaign. And before we get started, here's one little side note or caveat. You're probably used to your Facebook business page looking something like this, but over the past few months, Facebook has actually been rolling out the new beta version of their website. So in this version of Facebook, if you go to your business page and this is what you see, we're going to be focusing our attention today on the Ad Center, which you can access in the upper left. And if you do have this view of Facebook, you might also have the option to toggle to the new view by clicking the drop down in the upper right, which is your account settings. If you already have the new version of Facebook, your business page will look something more like this. So in this view of your Facebook business page, the Ad Center is located on the left, and you again have the ability to toggle between the old version and the beta version using that same drop down in the upper right. So either way, you need to have access to your Facebook company page. You'll need to be an admin on the account, and you'll need to know where the Ad Center is located. So whether, regardless of the version of Facebook you're using, just know where that Ad Center functionality is. Step 1 in this process, and arguably the most important, is creating your audience on Facebook. When you're in the Ad Center, if you actually click on it, you'll see a drop down there called Audiences. And this is a really great time to just step back and assess who is your target audience. If you're going to create this ad, who do you want to see it? And it's really cool because Facebook allows you to create multiple audiences for different purposes. So for example, you can target different audiences based on their location, based on demographics, based on the services that you're trying to offer, and also based on the behavior and the connections of the actual audience that you're seeking. So if you were to create a new audience, you would see a screen that looks like this. And looking at this, you're able to control the actual demographics of the audience. So we can control things like their age and gender. We can control the geographic location, so we can target an audience by specific states, or we can set mile radiuses. So it's really interesting because if, for example, in this graphic, we have St. Paul, Minnesota plus 10 miles. So there's a 10-mile radius. If we were to adjust that to a 20-mile radius, we would actually start catching some of western Wisconsin. So, you can either target whole states, or you can get really, really quite specific in terms of the area that you want to target. When selecting an audience, you can also target their interests, which is where some of the really interesting and sort of creative work comes into play. So you can target people on things like hobbies that they're interested in, pages that they've liked, industries that they follow, even their specific employers or their education level. And you can also target people based on, their politics. So one example is we have a solar energy client, and we had to sort of put our heads together and say, okay, so who is the target audience for solar energy in Minnesota? And we wanted to specifically target residential solar energy. So we thought, okay, people who are drawn to solar might also be interested in things like, sustainability, or, even broader topics, like they might be people who listen to NPR, or they might care about, organic food and organic cooking. So, you can get really, really specific and really put yourself in the shoes of your audience and come up with some really interesting criteria to define that audience. And the nice thing is Facebook really helps you out when you're in that audience creation phase, because you don't want your audience to be too broad, because then you're not creating targeted content for them. And you also don't want it to be too narrow, because then you're really limiting the pool of people who will see your advertisement. So in this example, you can see the criteria that's too broad. The audience is defined as just being in the United States. So obviously that's way too many people to be targeting for an ad. You're really doing yourself a disservice. You might think, oh, I want to get as many people as possible, but actually you're going to have much more success and utilize your budget much more efficiently if you have a clearly defined audience. So in this setting, they're saying that clearly defined is, 25 miles of San Francisco. So they're saying anyone in that area, that's a finite enough geographic area, that's a well-defined audience. And I would even augment that and say, I think that's still too broad, because you're not targeting your audience based on their interests or their needs, or any distinguishable factor. And then on the far right side, you see an audience that's much too narrow. So they have it set with, within 25 miles of Los Gatos, California. They're looking for females age 26 who are interested in singing and also happen to be engaged. And you can see there the potential reach is fewer than 1,000 people. So you need to put a little time and energy into creating your target audience, because it's just going to come around and really help you out when it comes to actually implementing your ads. Next, we have defining our goal. When we're looking at the ad center, there's a button there that just says create ad, and Facebook does a nice job of making this as easy and as painless as possible. So if we take a peek and let's say you click on that create ad button, you're going to be offered 9 different ad structures by Facebook. So the first one there, get more website purchases, is really intended for e-commerce websites looking to drive sales. The next 2, boost a post and boost an Instagram post, are intended to take existing content that you've already shared and basically just amplify that. The next one, get more leads, actually generates a lead form right on Facebook itself. The next one, get more messages, encourages people to use the Facebook Messenger function. Promote your page, brings in a broader audience to actually like your page. Promote your business locally is really tied to geographic information. So it's really based on, targeting, if you're a restaurant, for example, targeting the neighborhoods surrounding your restaurant. Build your business helps drive people to your website's homepage. And the other function that we're going to be focusing on today is the last one here, get more website visitors. And I really like this one for small businesses and nonprofits specifically because it gives us the flexibility to really guide where we want people to end up after they follow through with the ad. But going back to the boosting of posts, both Facebook posts and Instagram posts, really quickly, I just want to show you what that would look like if you were to select either of those two options. So this is what you would see if you were to click on that. So, these are just pre-created posts that have been, up for a few days on both Facebook and Instagram. They, have people who have already liked them and commented and engaged with the post. And so really what you're doing is just boosting that post to amplify it. And it's interesting because about, even 5 years ago, if a business posted something on their business profile, it was pretty likely that anyone who liked the page was going to see that post. Now, however, Facebook has updated their algorithms to prioritize personal profile content above business content. So that's sort of a downer for small businesses because when you're putting content out there, it's now sort of converted into this pay-to-play structure where if you don't boost a post, it's really, really hard to get traction and to make sure that it's being seen by the people you want to see it. Next, we're going to talk here about what does an ad actually look like. So you can see here, these are actual ads snapshots that I took on my phone, one for Bombas socks and the other for QuickBooks. So you can see what defines them as an ad is right under the name of the organization that's putting out the ad. You see in gray it says sponsored. So that's a dead giveaway that you're looking at an ad. The other thing is that on the bottom right, there's almost always a call to action button. So for the Bombas ad, you can see there's a shop now, and for QuickBooks, it says sign up. So that's how you can tell that you're definitely looking at a Facebook ad. And when you're on the desktop version of Facebook, this is how ads appear. So this is my actual Facebook feed. You can see here I'm being targeted for organic lawn care supplies, LL Bean. I told you, the LL Bean, they get me every time. And up here in the upper right, there are some smaller ads. So when you create an ad with Facebook, you don't really get to control exactly where the ad's going to appear, because what Facebook does is it automatically places the ad where it's going to get the most traction. And what these ads are using, and what all that location or the audience data is all based on your behavior as a user. So between your social media platforms and Google, they work together to create a profile on you as a user. And what that is your metadata. You've maybe heard that term thrown around before, but your metadata is basically your digital footprint. It tells them, your age, where you live, if you're married or not, what your interests are, your socioeconomic status. It's a little bit unnerving what your metadata actually knows about you, but it's also what allows us as marketers and as small business owners to create those targeted ads. So this is what an ad looks like on the Facebook desktop application. And again, this is an example of what it looks like on the mobile version. Okay, now we're going to chat about crafting the actual content of your ad. So if you go back to the original screen, you're in the ad center, you click create an ad. This time, instead of clicking that boost post button, if you click the very last option that we highlighted to increase web traffic, you'll be taken to a screen that looks like this. And here we have complete control over the ad creative. So you can see here we have 90 characters for the post description. We have the ability to set the photograph or upload a video. We can set the headline for the advertisement. We can control what that button label says, and we can set the URL for the ad. And what's really nice about Facebook is that it auto-generates a preview as you make these revisions. So you can really see in live time what your actual ad is going to look like. And like I said, Facebook owns Instagram. So when you create an ad on Facebook, you're automatically creating an Instagram ad as well. So this is just showing you on the left is what the Facebook desktop ad would look like, and the right is the Instagram ad. So you can see there that, the character count for Instagram is a little bit different. The button label looks a little bit different, but for the most part, it's the same content. And Facebook, again, is just going to automatically place that ad where it's going to get the most traction. Now we're going to talk about how to choose a strong graphic for your ad. It's really important that whatever graphic you choose is really consistent with your brand. So it should use, similar colors. If you have photographs that are already used on your website, you should try to use the ad as something to build your brand and your name recognition. Make sure you're using high quality photography. You can't just snap a shot with your iPhone and hope that's good enough. This is really something where you're making a first impression with your target audience. So you want to invest in either high quality stock photography or, potentially consider hiring a local photographer to capture, who you are and what you do. The photography should be eye-catching. The colors should be bold. It should be easy to read. It should be straightforward. People don't want to, sit and try to figure out what service you're offering or what product. They want to look at it and they want to get it. And it should also be reflective of your target audience. So this is an ad that I was specifically targeted for. And if I take a step back, I'm a female in her later 20s that definitely has a little bit of student loan debt left. So, when I look at this ad, it's pretty spot on with the targeting. So as with most channels, video is always king. The average engagement rate for a Facebook video post is 6.13%, which might not sound that impressive, but when you take into account that the average engagement rate for a Facebook post is only 3.6%, it's a pretty strong motivation to incorporate video content into your marketing strategy. So in the case of R&R Cultivation, this is just a 5-second looping GIF file that we created that showcases the different mushrooms available in their CSA. And you can see here a side-by-side comparison of what, a stationary image looks like compared to that rotating GIF. So, I think your eye is just naturally attracted to the movement. There are more colors. You get a broader sense of what you're actually getting with the CSA. So the graphic on the right is what we chose to go with for R&R Cultivation. Next, we have setting a budget and the duration of your ad. So the really cool thing about Facebook advertising is that you have a lot of control over these factors. So looking at this, the very first option under duration there, you can actually choose to run an ad continuously. So you can say, I want to spend $1 a day indefinitely and just see what this ad gets me. Or what we typically recommend is, choosing more of a finite campaign model. So saying we're going to run this ad $5 a day for 10 days and just, see what happens. And you can see on the right, it automatically tallies up, it's going to be 10 days, $5. That's going to be a total budget of $50. And then it also estimates your, amount of people that the ad is going to reach and the amount of link clicks. And you can see if we adjust that slider to say $3, it's going to change and go down. So at this rate, you're looking at the same time span, but your link clicks have now dropped from, about 89 to 75. So you have complete control over exactly how much money you're going to spend. But a common frustration I hear about Facebook advertising is this. And this I actually received from someone after sending out this webinar invitation. Someone emailed me back, and this was a direct quote. They said, I spent thousands of dollars with Facebook advertising and there was no ROI for my investment. They're not getting any more of my money. And if this person had been interested in chatting at all, I would have said, whoa, wait a second. Because there's really no situation where you should be throwing thousands of dollars at Facebook advertising with no ROI. If that's the case and you're investing that much with such little results, you're doing something wrong. So here are some hot tips for setting your budget. As I mentioned earlier, you can set a minimum of $1 a day, and there's really no maximum. So you shouldn't come into your very first Facebook ad campaign and say, I'm gonna spend $1,000 in 5 days and see what it gets me. I think it's a much smarter plan to just take it slow, take it easy. There's also a 4-day minimum for best results, and that's just recommended by Facebook. So, you don't have to start off with like a 3-month campaign. You can start really, really slow and start at a very small scale. And that's the nice thing about this, is that it's all very, very scalable, from the duration of the ad to the amount you're spending. So take it smart, take it slow. Don't invest a ton of money right off the bat. Figure out what's going to work, figure out sort of that winning combination, and go from there. And as I mentioned, there are sort of the two different models. There's an ongoing campaign, which can sometimes be helpful for building your name recognition and just, your brand awareness in general. But what we typically recommend for clients is more of a campaign focus. So coming in with a lot of strategy around what your goal is, what you want to accomplish, what page you want to drive people to on your website, and then, create images and, ad copy that really support that strategy. And another thing you can do is run multiple ads for an A/B test. And the idea behind an A/B test is basically you have 2 identical versions of an ad that you just tweak one element of, so that you can run these 2 ads concurrently and see if that minor change you had actually makes a difference in how the ad is received. So an example of that would be, creating an ad with 2 different graphics, but the exact same headlines, the exact same text. And again, just trial and error. Take it slow, figure out what works, and make adjustments and move forward from there. Another strategy that I recommend is creating 4 ads that can run concurrently during the same week. And if you just stagger the start by 1 day, that also gives you a nice overview to look at this and say, okay, so between these 4 ads, ad 3 performed the best during that 7-day span. And then what you can do is create an A/B test surrounding ad 3. So you can duplicate ad 3 and say, this time we're gonna, take the exact same thing, but we're gonna, change the graphic, or we're gonna change the headline. And you can, again, just see what works, see what doesn't, and refine from there. And the last thing we're going to look at today is how to measure the results of your Facebook ad campaigns. And that's really one of my favorite parts about Facebook ad campaigns, is that it's really so easy to measure their success. So after you complete a campaign, you will be presented with a performance report. So in this case, what we're looking at is a $3 per day budget that spanned 30 days. And in total, we had 94 landing page views or link clicks, a total reach of 6,536, which basically calculates down into a cost per click rate of 96 cents per click. And you can also see the various levels of activity associated with the ad we created. So we had 100 people who engaged with the post. We had 94 people who clicked that link. And we had 5 people who, used those goofy little reaction icons. So you can really take a look and see, like, okay, so, $89 total spend resulted in 94 clicks, and make an assessment about whether or not that was worth it. You also get to see basically who saw your ad. So in this case, we have an age breakdown and a gender breakdown. So in the ad that we placed, for some reason, it just, settled in more with men. So 72.8% of the people who saw the ad were men. That was not intentional. We set the gender targeting to be both, but Facebook basically just, based on the user interest in the audience that you determine, that's just how it happened. And then looking at the placement and the location, it's really interesting to look at the placement, because a lot of people, when they think of Facebook advertising, picture desktop ads, when in actuality, the vast majority of the placements for those ads are actually happening on mobile. So, it's really important that when you're designing your ad, you're taking that into account as well. So out of all the placements, only 24 people saw the advertisement we created on their actual desktop computer. And in terms of the location, not surprising at all that, we were targeting the state of Minnesota, so every single placement of the ad was for audience members in Minnesota. A really, really great combination here is using Facebook ads with Google Analytics. So Google Analytics are designed to track user behavior on your actual website. And Facebook ads obviously is everything we've covered up until now. So Facebook ads, you're trying to drive people to your website, and Google Analytics says, okay, once they're on your website, what do they do? So here's a screenshot from a 3-month campaign we did for R&R Cultivation. And you can see exactly when the campaign started, there was quite a spike in website traffic. Their overall users were up 386%. Their individual sessions were up 383%. Their bounce rate decreased, which is the number of people who basically land on a page and then take a peek, find the information they're looking for, and leave. And their session duration went up by 6% to 1 minute and 53 seconds. So those are all really awesome statistics to be looking at for, such a small company. And in summary, Facebook ads are a really great way to increase your name recognition and drive website traffic. You should never throw money at it and hope it sticks. You should be strategic, be slow, think about what you're doing, think about your overall strategy, make decisions, and readjust if necessary. You should really invest time up front to define your target audience, because the more specific you can get without being too narrow, the better results your ad will yield. Also, don't skimp on graphics. Make sure that you're, choosing images strategically. If necessary, invest a little bit to just have an impressive graphic that will draw the attention of your users. And finally, make sure that you have a system in place to accurately measure the results of your ad. And with that, we'll open it up to questions. And if you'd still like to submit a question, you can use the GoToMeeting control panel. So let me take a look here. All right, so we have a question. I see, okay, so one person asked, I see get started with automated ads. Is that a good place to start? And I think that, the automated ads are fine, but I would recommend, again, investing in that audience, because if you can define that, that's going to be really helpful. So the more specific you can get by telling Facebook exactly who you want to target, the more accurate those placements are going to be. Another question is, does a business page look different from a personal page? And does it have different features? The answer is absolutely yes. So there are, personal pages are based on connections with other people versus business pages, which are completely designed around likes. So it's how many likes does a page have versus how many friends. And so it's really, really important that, to take part in any of this, you need to have a page for your business. So you should definitely look that up. I'm happy to chat with you about the process of creating a business page, but that's absolutely essential for any business. Let's see here. Here we have a question: does Facebook advertising work as well for B2B services as for B2C services? And is LinkedIn better for the former rather than Facebook? Yes, so Facebook advertising definitely works for B2B services. You can, again, get really specific with who you're targeting. So you can target business executives, you can target facilities managers. And while they might be viewing Facebook in their off time, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not making an impact and, creating a touch point where they might potentially want to reach out to you. So in terms of LinkedIn, LinkedIn is also an option, but again, I think getting in front of your audience and defining that audience is just the most important part. So I really like the structure that Facebook has, and I think it's really quite helpful that creating a Facebook ad automatically gets you an Instagram ad. And LinkedIn, as we were looking at before, really isn't that popular compared to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's see, we have another question. Is there a way to sign up for Facebook and associated advertising commercially without having to create an individual personal account with Facebook? Short answer is no. You need to have an admin for your business account. So unless you have someone else who is willing to be the administrator on your account and manage it for you, you basically need to have a Facebook account yourself. Let's see here. Can you talk a little bit more about how to get to the area where you drill down into interests? I've done Facebook ads before, but when I was working with it, it only limited me to geography, and I would love to be able to add more modifiers. That's a really great question, and it's a little tricky to explain exactly where to go because, as I mentioned, Facebook is rolling out that new beta version, so it might look slightly different, but as long as you're in that ad center, you should find an area that allows you to create and edit different audiences. So, as long as you have those audiences created and also make sure that the goal you set allows for targeting of different audiences, that's the other thing. That grid that I was showing earlier that had those 9 different ad structures, make sure that you have the one that will drive traffic to your website, because I know for a fact that allows you to select that target audience that you created in the ad center. Someone here asked, does PSM offer help with creating Facebook ads? If so, is there somewhere we can find info on the cost? Yes, absolutely. PSM can help, administer and basically design the whole strategy behind a Facebook ad campaign. We have graphic designers on our site who can, basically create custom graphics for your business. We have social media experts who can manage the campaign and make those adjustments. Yeah. You can contact us at any time. We are happy to discuss further. Let's see. Does anyone else have any questions? Now is the time to submit those. Otherwise, let's see here. Okay, here's another question. It says, we ran a lead gen ad that's been rejected multiple times after running fine for a few days. Facebook hasn't been helpful for determining why. Any ideas? That is a great question, and I know since COVID-19, Facebook, the whole ad approval process has been a lot slower than normal. Usually they try to submit a reason why your ad has been rejected. For example, if you have an ad for socks, but the text in the advertisement is talking about, like hamburgers, it senses that there's a mismatch in what you're trying to sell and thinks it's misleading. So that's like one example of why they would reject the ad. But usually you can basically contest the ad rejection, and then it'll actually be looked over by a human instead of some algorithm. And typically I've had really good success with having an actual person at Facebook review it and then see like, oh, okay, I see they're using, the hamburger is just an analogy. So while they use that keyword, it's actually not a misleading ad, or, whatever it is. Very good question. So, if you enjoyed this webinar, make sure to register for our upcoming webinar on August 27th, which is Learn How to Become a Confident Networker. And thank you so much for joining me today. And if you stay on the call, you'll be directed to an evaluation form. And we'd really love to hear your feedback so we can continue offering relevant free webinars. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.